Hey, Keto Freaks. Here's an update on Keto Fest. Keto Fest is a ketogenic festival for everyone. Richard Morris and I, along with a host of keto rock stars you probably know, are turning the entire coastal town of New London, Connecticut ketogenic for a whole weekend next July. At least we hope it'll be next July. The actual date won't be confirmed until mid-January. You want talks by some of the hottest names in keto? Some of the best and brightest minds have already said they want to come, including Jimmy Moore, Megan Ramos, Ira Cummins, Dr. Jeff Gerber, Dr. Eric Westman, and Dr. Ted Naiman. We hope to have a bacon bar going all day long during the talks. Knowledge and bacon. But we're going to do much more than sit in on these great talks. How about an outdoor pig roast, cooking classes, fitness classes, walking tours, Segway tours, and of course, live music and hanging out with fellow Ketonians. Several restaurants and bars in the neighborhood have offered up a special keto menu that includes low-carb potables, chicken wings, and fathead pizza. Wouldn't a fathead pizza truck be the best ever? Yeah, I'm talking a portable brick oven, all weekend long. Well, we're going to have a Kickstarter in March to sell tickets. Meantime, add your name to the mailing list at ketofest.com. Keto Fest, real keto for real people. Welcome back to Two Keto Dudes. This is Carl Franklin from Connecticut in the United States. And in February 2016, I put myself on a ketogenic diet to take control of my metabolism. In just 2.5 months, I managed to reverse all my markers of type 2 diabetes with diet alone. As of now, I'm 80 pounds lighter with no signs of diabetes or heart disease.
Hi, I'm Richard Morris in Canberra, Australia, and I've been on a ketogenic diet for over 2 years, almost 3 years now.
Yeah,
and when I started, I was very sick with complications from type 2 diabetes. Within 6 months of starting a ketogenic diet, all of my biomarkers of disease had disappeared. I've also lost about 80 pounds and have completely turned my health around.
And this show is a document of my progress through ketosis and Richard's experience thriving for years in ketosis.
Yeah.
And hopefully that might help a few people who are curious about this kind of dietary hacking.
Yeah, we're not doctors. We don't want to give anyone any medical advice, but we are keen to share our own experiences. We're actually both software developers, so we're not afraid of a little technical detail, are we, Carl?
Nah.
We've done some research into our own deranged metabolisms and the science behind them. We hope to share some of that research. Where possible, we intend to put links in the show notes to cite research supporting any claims that we make.
You'll probably work out pretty quickly that we're both foodies.
Yeah.
We love to cook and we love to eat.
Sure do.
In every episode, we both share a keto recipe that cannot be ignored.
Oh, I tried to ignore one once. Didn't last very long.
So, Richard, let's start podcast number 45, Conventional Wisdom. So, Richard, do we have any corrections or apologies from last week?
Yes, actually, we've got two. There's one that I should make, and that is when I gave the recipe for making shrimp noodles, I should have mentioned that you probably should wear gloves. I did mention you should wash your hands afterwards, but of course you're working with meat glue. Meat glues proteins to proteins, and our skin is made of protein, so you don't want to glue yourself to yourself.
So is it like super glue if you get it on your fingers?
Yeah, it's like super glue. If you get it on your fingers and then bring that up to 55 degrees Celsius or 130 Fahrenheit, then it will be literally like super glue. Yes, just wash your hands afterwards. You'll be fine. I used plastic gloves, so
easy
when I made them. Yeah, once it's set, it's totally benign and harmless. It won't link any more proteins because it's done its job. And it's not. I mean, it is. I guess you could say it's frankenfood, but it's totally natural. It's made by a bacteria.
And again, anthrax is natural too, right?
This is true. So the other errata that I have is from Amber, who was our guest last week.
What a great show, by the way. Oh, my God.
Oh, yeah. Wasn't that good? I listened to it today when I was riding my bike ride. I did a 50K bike ride to the next town. Normally I ride around to our lake on the weekend, but this time I went to the next town over and rode around their lake.
Wow.
And then rode back. And the whole time I was listening to Amber's podcast, how good.
The only thing that I could say about it is we got some feedback that they wanted a little more science and some macros and all of that stuff and how it affects her blood sugar. But, we were just scratching the surface with Amber. We're going to have her back for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, she's been awesome. So she did give us one errata. She says that in our podcast, Carl asked me if babies have to be in ketosis to build brains. And I say yes, but that's not entirely true. That is, the primary way that babies build fat and cholesterol in the brain in normal conditions is out of ketone bodies, though a small proportion is also made out of glucose. I have a few references on this point in the talk transcript of my blog.
Okay.
She says the critical question is, what happens if there are no ketones to be had and only glucose? And the answer seems to be that glucose will suffice. There's a rare inborn error of metabolism called HMG-CoA lyase deficiency, which prevents the body from making ketones. A paper by another brilliant Morris reports that people afflicted with this have white matter abnormalities but no noticeable loss of function, except, of course, they can't go without food for long. So this suggests that in cases where there are no circulating ketones because they can't make them, the glucose alternative pathway will take over and get at least an adequate brain constructed. And Amber goes on and she says, it occurs to me that children with this condition may be perfect candidates for the therapeutic use of ketone esters, providing the condition doesn't somehow prevent their use. Mm-hmm. So that was quite interesting. We'll put information about that on the Errata for that show. And we'll thank Amber for joining us last week, and we look forward to speaking to her again.
Absolutely. So let's revisit what a ketogenic diet is for those who are just joining us for the first time.
Sure.
A well-formulated ketogenic diet restricts carbohydrates to incidental carbohydrates from green leafy vegetables, non-starchy vegetables.
Pretty much, yeah.
Maybe a few nuts, that kind of thing. But no sugar, no starch, no bread, none of that stuff.
No pasta.
Yeah. And where it differs from other low-carb diets is that we put a moderate cap on protein. Protein scales.
Right.
How much protein you have scales to the amount of lean body mass that you have. And we typically eat around 1 to 1.5 grams of protein a day for every kilogram of lean body mass that we have.
That's right.
And then the rest of it is fat.
Yeah.
And if you're hungry, you eat a little fat, or you try to eat fattier cuts of meat until you're full. Mm-hmm. And I love the way that you put it in your haiku, Richard, which is eat when you're hungry, mostly fat with some protein, stop when you are full.
Yeah, that's pretty much it, isn't it?
Yeah.
I was told actually that haikus require a mention of a season and something in nature. So
yeah,
I need to somehow squeeze that in. I've got no syllables left. So
you know what? Fat is natural.
Yeah, that's true.
What you mean is the environment, like a beach or sand or wind or something. Yeah.
To be official.
I like it, however, so there you go. And it's nice and easy to remember. Mm-hmm. All right, so let's tell everybody how our weeks were. How was yours?
Yeah, mine was pretty good. I just been on a bike ride. I'm in the middle of a Zorn fast, so I'm 3 days into a 4-day Zorn fast.
Okay.
And I've just been on a 50K bike ride. As I mentioned, I went to the next town over and rode around their lake and then rode back again, and that was about 50K worth. And listened to podcasts while I ride, which is what I usually do on the weekends. Yeah, I got a really bad sunburn last weekend. After we recorded the podcast, I went out that Sunday and I rode with a singlet without any sleeves on it, and my upper arms had not seen sun for maybe 2 decades, and that was a stupid thing to do. Absolutely stupid. So
sometimes you just feel like you're immortal,
Yeah,
isn't it?
You need to be brought down a peg.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I had that experience too. Out on the East Coast here, there's a wonderful spot called Block Island. And Block Island is off the coast of Rhode Island.
Okay.
And it's a wonderful little beach island with a lot of touristy stuff. And I went there to play in a band, a substitute as a guitar player for this band. They needed a sub. And it was during the summer, and I thought, what the heck? I'm immortal. I don't need no sunscreen. I laid out on the beach all day and paid for it dearly.
Oh, dear.
Got to watch out for that stuff.
Yeah, I figure if I get one decent burn at the beginning of summer, it reminds me that I'm not immortal and I'm pretty good for the rest of the summer. I put on sunblock whenever I go out. So that was my week. How was yours, Carl?
I've had a good week, Richard.
Awesome.
I've been making some new foods and sticking to my window of eating in mostly a 6-hour or 7-hour window. And that has been fantastic for me. And, weight comes off like at a pound a day when I do that. And I get down to a new low. And then usually something happens where I'll have a little too much Carl's Head pizza or, maybe whatever. I eat a little bit too much and then I go up for a couple of days and then I come down and I go up. So I'm sort of swinging around the last 5 or 10 pounds for, quite a while here. That said, I feel so good. And exercising when I want to exercise, I just went out and shoveled the driveway the other day. And my wife said to me, this is the first time I wasn't worried about you when you were shoveling the driveway because usually I huff and puff and, before I got healthy.
Sure.
And I was just devouring it. I was just like, a machine. It's just wonderful.
Yeah. It's a bit like that. We don't generally go down in a straight line as we lose weight. And part of that has to do with the fact that losing weight is a stress for the body. And so it'll get to the point where it says, okay, I need to make sure that this person isn't dying. The body's number one priority is survival. So you could imagine with most animals, if they're losing weight, then they're coming under a lot of stress. And so their bodies and our bodies basically take a pause and we'll make sure that everything is okay before proceeding on the next trip down. Now, the other interesting thing is that for those people who are insulin resistant like you and I are, we generally make a lot more insulin than most people. And so we have to be a little bit more tighter control on carbs and protein because we make so much. We can make 10 times the amount of insulin. And when most people make insulin, it only hangs around for about half an hour and the body uses it. Whereas for us, because we don't use it very efficiently, it can hang around for about 5 or 6 hours. So, so that's the complexity for type 2 diabetics, that we produce a lot of insulin. So as we're losing weight, we get to the point where whatever it is that we're doing is producing enough insulin to stop further weight loss. And we need to then, revisit what we're doing. Are we eating as few carbohydrates as we need to? Are sneaky carbs getting back into our diet? Are we just eating a lot more protein? Are we just not concentrating on the road, basically? So, so that's really the strategy, I guess, is, if you're having these mini stalls. If you have a major stall, then that means that you've basically hit the point where your basal level of insulin is stopping you from going down any further, and that's where you need to take strategies to lower insulin, and then that will enable you to keep losing weight.
Yeah. And
the other important thing to note is that the goal weight that we have set ourselves may not be the goal weight that our body is willing to accept to maximize our survival.
Yeah.
For example, you might want to have a perfect bikini body for summer. Your body probably doesn't want that. It probably wants you to be gladiator fit,
Yeah. Yeah.
Gladiators had a good bit of body fat around them to protect from injury.
Right.
So it's quite possible that your goals and your body's goals are different. So your point about feeling good is kind of important, because that, for me, is the ultimate goal. Well, my first goal is glucose control. My second goal is general health and feeling good.
Right.
And if your glucose is in control, and it is, and your lipids are looking awesome, which they are, and your markers of cardiovascular disease are all low, which they are, and you're feeling great, you've got 4 out of the 5 check boxes checked off.
Right.
So cut yourself some slack. You will lose more weight. That will happen. But
oh yeah, absolutely. And I don't mind it at all. And speaking of this, we saw this great video that got posted in our group this week of Stephen Finney in his interactive workshop, Optimizing Low Carb, High Fat for Weight Loss and Health from Low Carb Down Under, right?
Yeah, I actually flew to Sydney for that event. You can actually hear me laughing at in the front row, stage left.
Oh, that's hilarious. So I figured you were there because this is what you were talking about.
Yeah.
So essentially he took questions from the audience and they were so great. And one of the key questions was at about 34 minutes in, was about, I see in my clinic a lot of women come in, and they, even though they have been doing it for a few weeks, the low carb, high fat diet, the ketogenic diet, they're not losing weight, even though their DEXA scans are positive, showing more lean muscle mass and less body fat. So they're converting fat to muscle. Their blood pressure improves. Their lipids improve.
Sure.
They feel much better. They have a lot more energy. They have the mental clarity. They have all the benefits. But they're so upset because they're not losing. They might even be gaining weight. And we talked about this a couple of times on our show. And he basically says, he didn't say hormones are, hormone balance comes into play like a lot of other people have said. But he clearly just said that, he sees it a lot. And and it's just something that is an observation of nature. And when you find all of these other things that happen first with women, typically, all of, the mostly converting fat to muscle,
right?
That is a really good sign that you're heading in the right direction. And we know Karen Mangicotti had this exact experience.
But she also said she felt some of the mental benefits as well.
Yeah.
Even without weight benefits, she was getting the mental clarity in her writing and what have you. So, she definitely saw that value. But she went 6 weeks where her first 6 weeks on keto, she was gaining weight every week. And I got to admit, if it was me, I would have ditched it after the third or fourth week. But she stuck to it because she was so scared about Mark's conditions. And, Mark actually says to me that she really started losing weight once they upped the fat in her diet.
Right.
And it was actually interesting going back to Stephen Finney. He mentions in that video that the dinner the night before, they had all of this lean meat. And so he had to order a plate of fat. I was there. Yeah. I was actually at that dinner. And I was sitting next to him, and we ate exactly this. We ate pretty much exactly the same food. And he ordered a bowl with about 250 mils of melted butter that he ladled onto his meal. Now, we ate pretty much the same food. I didn't eat the butter. I didn't add any of that fat bomb to my food because I was quite sated. And yet, at the same time in the meal, we both got up satisfied, and neither of us were hungry through the night, and we both ate pretty much the same thing the next day over breakfast. So that's an indication that he is a lot more lean than I am, and he needed to have more fat on his plate. Yeah. But the critical thing here is you've got to trust your satiety signals, because hunger is what our bodies use to tell us that we're below survival level of energy coming in. And so once you start trusting those, and he did mention this during the talk, he always uses hunger as his guideline to fueling conditions. It's
a brilliant hour-long workshop that you should definitely watch, and we're going to link to it.
We will do.
Yeah. All right, Richard, let's talk conventional wisdom. And I thought about this topic because, as you probably know, I'm a huge fan of National Public Radio, NPR, which is, in my opinion, the best source of news and information that Americans can get, or just about anybody in the Western world can get on the internet, and various news forms.
You probably don't know this, but in Australia, we get American news every evening, direct from America, and it's the NPR broadcast.
Oh, that's great.
So the news that the rest of the world gets of America from America is NPR.
So, of course, you like to trust NPR, but even NPR is susceptible to confusion based on conventional wisdom. And I just thought, when I heard this clip that I'm going to show you now, I just thought there's a show here, because so much of what we know about, or quote unquote know about why we get fat, and we think we know about why we get put on weight, is based in conventional wisdom that somehow it's the fat. But if you listen to the language of what we say, the clues are in there.
Okay.
That we just have a couple of things wrong, but we kind of know that, sugar and starch are bad. However, we always leap to vilify fat.
Right.
So people think in the conventional wisdom that Vegetables are great. You should eat more vegetables, right?
Sure. Which, as we proved last week with Amber, vegetables are not necessarily in a safe diet.
That's right. And starches and sugars, everybody kind of knows that those are bad. However, there's some sort of perverse idea that if you eat something really starchy without any fat, that somehow that makes it okay.
Such as what, for example?
Such as a potato.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So I'm offering up this little clip from Car Talk as evidence of our flawed conventional wisdom. Take a listen.
And God populated the earth with broccoli and cauliflower and spinach, green and yellow vegetables of all kinds, so man and woman would live long and healthy lives.
Right.
And Satan created McDonald's. And McDonald's brought forth the 99-cent double cheeseburger, and Satan said to man, "You want fries with that?" And man said, "Supersize them." And man gained pounds. And God said, "Try my crispy fresh salad, that woman might keep her figure that man found so fair." And Satan brought forth creamy dressings, bacon bits, and shredded cheese, and there was ice cream for dessert. And woman gained pounds. And God said, "I have sent your heart healthy vegetables and olive oil with which to cook them."
Olive oil.
And Satan brought forth chicken fried steak so big it needed its own platter, and man gained pounds, and his bad cholesterol went through the roof. And God brought forth running shoes, and man resolved to lose those extra pounds. And Satan brought forth cable TV with remote control.
Sloth.
So man would not have to toil to change channels between ESPN and ESPN2. And man gained pounds. And God said, "You're running up the score, devil." And God brought forth the potato, a vegetable naturally low in fat and brimming with nutrition. And Satan peeled off the healthful skin, sliced the starchy center into chips, and deep fat fried them.
Oh, that
and he
fat's
created
terrible.
sour cream dip also.
Yay, Satan!
And man clutched his remote control and ate the potato chips, swaddled in cholesterol, and man went into cardiac arrest. And God sighed and created quadruple bypass surgery. And Satan created HMOs.
All right, so you hear the clues. Olive oil is okay. Olive oil is okay, right?
Yep.
Because, green salads with olive oil, okay.
Yep.
And then, but sour cream dip and bacon bits are not. Apparently swaddled in cholesterol. So I'm not saying that Click and Clack are dietitians or experts on nutrition, but everybody just seems to agree, like to the point where we can all laugh and make jokes, and jokes are all about pointing out the realities of life in a funny way.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm saying? That's what jokes do.
So the funny thing is that even though that I know that it's bull, I found that funny.
Yeah, of course it's funny.
I was going along with the HMO and I thought it was funny,
Right?
And yet it's all founded on a tissue of lies.
It's all wrong.
It's all wrong.
And so this is what we're up against. We actually have to live in a world where we're looking for an out. And this is probably why people can't get started with keto, and it takes them a long time.
Yeah.
I remember having this issue. I was listening to, I think it was Wait, Don't Tell Me.
Okay.
And Peter Sagal, is a very funny guy. And he's talking about, I think he was goofing on a low carb diet.
Okay.
And he said something and everybody laughed. And I think it was, if you're eating a double cheeseburger with extra cheese and greasy bacon and a lot of mayo, and even though you got some lettuce and tomato on there, chances are it's not the bun. I remember that as a quote. I couldn't actually find the show where he said that. And everybody laughed. Chances are it's not the bun.
Yep.
And he's completely wrong.
Right.
But everybody laughs.
Yeah, you ditch the special sauce, which is full of sugar, and you ditch the bun. Most of the other things, ditch the fries. You don't need the fries. The burger itself is fine.
Yeah, right. And, here's the thing, that these couple examples are about laughs, and they're comedians. These aren't people who are qualified to have an opinion on, however, so this is one problem. The other problem is that people are always looking for a crutch.
Right.
And especially when it comes to getting started on keto and sticking with it.
Mm-hmm.
And, in the back of your mind, you're going to hear Peter Sagal saying to you, it's not the bun, ha, ha, ha.
Right.
And you're going to say, okay, well, what if he's right? I'll just go ahead and eat whatever.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it sort of sets us up to fail. Okay, so it's one thing when comedians say stuff, and that has an influence. But when doctors say stuff,
Right.
it has an even bigger influence.
Sure.
And it's impossible for us to think, because we actually aren't full of hubris, most of us, that we know something that the doctors don't know. That's a really difficult thing for people to get.
Yeah.
So let me give you another example. This is from Super Size Me. Mm-hmm. When Morgan Spurlock went to his internist, who is Dr. Daryl Isaacs,
Right.
after being on this, diet where he ate McDonald's and all of this stuff, a lot of fries and a lot of soda.
He followed their rules. If they offered him a supersize, he would take it, and he was just trying to point out how stupid that was. Yeah.
You got it. So he goes to the doctor about 2 weeks before the end of his experiment, and his doctor looks at his liver numbers and says, man, this is bad. You should stop. So this is where we pick up in the doctor's office, where Morgan Spurlock is just getting his blood pressure tested, and the doctor's looking at his liver numbers. Here we go.
Okay.
150/90. The headaches might even be hypertensive headaches, but they're probably not. They're probably related to, to blood sugar. You might be in this hyperinsulinemic state.
So he gets that.
Yeah, he does.
150/110.
Now they're looking at its numbers.
The total cholesterol was 165 before. Now it's 225. A liver that's inflamed in any way or sick in any way will leak some of its enzymes out into the blood.
So he gets that.
Yeah, he does.
So this is very non-specific, but it means the liver is sick. Yeah. And the most likely cause of your liver sickness is a fatty liver.
He gets that.
Is this true?
Your liver is now like pate. SGOT was originally 21. Now it's
130.
And SGPT was originally 20.
Was
Now
20.
it's 290. More than tenfold increase.
That's
Not good. Not good. Not good.
Not good.
Anybody would say right now that you're sick. You feel fatigued with this. You feel lethargic with this. You feel run down with this.
Here it comes.
Yeah.
If somebody were doing this to their liver with alcohol, they could theoretically wipe out the liver, wipe out all the liver cells, and there'd be liver failure. Now, I've never heard of anybody doing this to their liver with a high-fat diet.
Dope.
Dope.
But I guess anything's possible. I mean, I don't know.
I don't know.
What answer the question? Never been done before. No one's ever wiped out their liver with a high-fat diet before.
Wow.
No one's ever wiped out their liver with a high-fat diet before. And the irony is, he's right.
Yes.
However, with a combination of high fat and high carbs,
Yeah.
or even just high carbs, low fat, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You can, and people do wipe out their liver.
Yeah. Well, that guy that did that Australian movie, Damon Gamo, did that sugar film. He did that.
That's right.
Now, what he did was he ate only food that a dietitian would consider healthy. So muesli bars, muesli, fruit.
So it was low fat.
It was low fat, and it was all food that we all consider to be natural and healthy. And he developed fatty liver disease, because he was eating so much sugar. And the body can only handle about a teaspoon of sugar in your blood. And it's easy enough to do the math on that. If you look at your blood glucometer results, you can do the calculation. You've got 5 litres of blood. You can work out how many grams of sugar. There's about 5 grams in your entire body, running around in your blood.
About a teaspoon.
Yeah, about a teaspoon. And all of the rest of it gets used. And how does it get used? We don't store much glucose. We can store a little bit in our liver, but if we still have a full liver from the previous day, we're not going to be able to stuff any more in there.
Right.
What happens? Gets converted into fat.
Yeah.
Gets converted into fat in your liver, And the closest place to put that fat is in your liver. So that's how you make foie gras.
And then when you're foie gras and you can't stuff any more in your liver, now you start putting it viscerally around your organs,
right,
and storing it there.
Yeah, including your pancreas. Yeah.
Yeah, and now you have your basic belly.
Yes, that's how you get apple-shaped people with thin legs, thin arms, and a big fat belly. So
the thing is, we know the science now, and I will point you to a study here in the Annals of Internal Medicine from 2014, Effects of Low Carbohydrate and Low Fat Diets, a randomized trial.
Okay.
Now, this is a randomized trial. This is the holy grail of scientific inquiry, right?
Right.
Anybody will tell you that a randomized trial basically takes a group of people and randomly shuffles them into separate subgroups, and one subgroup gets one treatment, the other subgroup gets another treatment, but typically the only thing that's different is the thing that you want to test for.
Normally the one group gets a control, and the other group gets the intervention. So.
That's right. And the thing is if you want to test just one variable, you don't change 5 variables for the control group. You only change one, the one that you want to test, right? And then you do it again with either the same people or different people, but you switch it.
Do a crossover.
Yeah, you switch it. Basically, you say, all right, we cut carbohydrates in this group. Now we're going to raise carbohydrates and see what happens, right? Or a particular food or whatever. Yeah. So the abstract basically says low carbohydrate diets are popular for weight loss, but their cardiovascular effects have not been well studied, particularly in diverse populations. The objective is to examine the effects of a low carbohydrate diet compared with a low fat diet on body weight and cardiovascular risk factors. And so this was set in a large academic medical center. 148 men and women without clinical cardiovascular disease and diabetes were in this group. A low carbohydrate or low fat diet. Both groups received dietary counseling at regular intervals throughout the trial. And the measurements were data on weight, cardiovascular risk factors, and dietary composition were collected at 0, 3, 6, and 12 months. So here are the results. 82%, 60 participants in the low-fat group, and 79% or 59 participants in the low-carbohydrate group completed the intervention. So that's good. Mostly everybody completed it.
Yeah.
At 12 months, participants on the low-carbohydrate diet had greater decreases in weight, fat mass, ratio of total high-density lipoproteins, or HDL cholesterol, and triglyceride level.
Perfect.
And greater increases in HDL cholesterol level than on the low-fat diet.
Which is what you'd expect.
Yeah. So the conclusion is the low-carbohydrate diet was more effective for weight loss and cardiovascular risk factor reduction than the low-fat diet. Restricting carbohydrate may be an option for persons seeking to lose weight and reduce cardiovascular risk factors. This is just one study.
Right.
However, it's fairly recent. It's less than 3 years old.
2014, yeah.
September 2014, yeah.
So this is the National Institute of Health, and this is the gold standard, I guess, for public research.
It certainly is, and they even post the author and disclosure information there, and you can see who did the study and who funded it and everything else. And there's nothing fishy going on here, as far as I can tell. So there you go. And that's just one study. There are lots of them out there, even for longer than 12 months, 2 years, 6 years.
Yeah, there's like 70-odd RCTs that have compared low-fat to low-carbohydrate diets. And bear in mind that if you ask a dietitian, the standard answer will be you must go on a low-fat diet. If you want to lose weight or if you want to get cardiovascular health, then you must go on a low-fat diet. If you go on a high-fat diet or a low-carb, high-fat diet, then their assumption, and a dietitian will tell you this, is that will increase your risk of cardiovascular disease. Yeah. And this is one of the reasons why they won't put diabetics on a low-carbohydrate diet. We know that the primary flaw for a diabetic is they cannot safely metabolize glucose.
Right.
So you would think that a low glucose diet would be the solution, but dietitians will say, well, diabetics have 4 times the risk of cardiovascular disease, and obviously if we feed you a high-fat diet, you'll get worse cardiovascular disease.
Right.
So the crazy thing is we've got the data. We've got some 55 randomized control trials that compare a low-carb diet against a low-fat diet. And in 47 of the 55, the low-carb diets have a better result than the low-fat diets. And in 6 of these diets, a low-fat diet has a better result than the low-carb diet. So you think, okay, the data is equivocal. Both sides have some evidence supporting them. Well, if you actually dig into these RCTs, 28 of the 55 that showed that the low-carb diet was better than a low-fat diet, the data was significant. That is, the weight loss and the benefit to their cardiovascular lipid markers was all statistically significant data. In 0 of the 6 that showed that low fat was better than low carb was the benefit significant statistically. So, pretty much you can say that the conclusion those was that the low fat diet was slightly better than the low carb diet, but it was such a small amount that it wasn't worth mentioning. But in the low carb diet, 28 of them were significant.
So if we wanted to take this link and have a headline that sort of captures people's attention, I would say that 28 randomized controlled trials up to 2 years long show that low-carb diets are healthier than low-fat diets.
Yep, and drop the microphone.
Yeah.
Yes, it's really infuriating that we tend to take on face value these statements about low-fat diets being better for us, and we all believe it. I mean, you and I were listening to those comedy bits.
Oh, yeah.
We both found them funny because there was an element of what we thought was truth in there. And if you look at the if you look at people in the low carb community, there's hundreds of different Facebook groups, and everybody has a slightly different way of doing low carb. And there's groups that are entirely lipophobic. They restrict fat as much as they possibly can because they still bear this, I guess, original sin, where we all assume that if we eat fat, we're going to get fat, and therefore fat is the problem. And fat is just energy,
Right.
And it's in fact, it's such a safe form of energy that it's what we make when we have excess energy,
Yeah.
So it's frustrating because there are millions of diabetics in the world who are being injured every day because of this fundamental mistake.
So that begs the question, what do we do to overcome the obvious psychological effects of this conventional wisdom that is all around us every day, everywhere we go, even from our doctors, when we know that the science is out there that disproves it? Well, in computer programming, we have this maxim, garbage in equals garbage out, right?
Yeah.
Garbage in, garbage out. In other words, if you start with bad data, when you process it, you're going to end up with bad results.
Absolutely.
And so what you put in your brain and what you feed your mind on makes a big difference as to what you do. So your behavior and the things that you do, not believe, the things that you do are influenced by what goes in your mind. I mean, we're very careful about what goes in our bodies, but we're not so careful about what we occupy our minds with, right?
Yeah.
And so occupy your mind with the right stuff. Go to YouTube and watch Dr. Finney and Dr. Volek and watch Jason Fung and listen to Jimmy Moore in the doc and listen to Two Keto Dudes and go to the people that are citing the science.
Right. That's what it comes down to. When you've got two people saying two different things and both appear to be correct, ask them for the science and drill in and find out if what they're saying is supported by the evidence in the science. And if it isn't, then
it's a contradiction, and we have the ability to hold contradictions in our mind. We'll just wait until the answer comes.
Yeah. I'll give you a good example. When I first started on this diet, I was worried about losing my toe. So I was terrified about losing my toe. And I wasn't sure that this diet was going to work, but I took a gamble. I read the science, and I made myself understand what it was that was going wrong with my body. I basically went back to some old biochemical textbooks that I had from when I was at university in the 80s and basically researched what is happening to my body, how does somebody become diabetic? Why can't I get healthy? And from there, I found the ketogenic diet. I found people like Tim Noakes, who was managing to use it to manage his own glucose. And so that's really where I came from. But in the early days where I first started doing this, I was talking on Facebook about, this Ansel Keys' 7-country study has got knobs on. It doesn't make any sense.
It's got knobs on.
Exactly.
I love these Australian little quips
mannerisms
that you come up with every once in a while.
So one of my friends was a dietitian, and she was fighting me. I was basically putting up photos of the food that I eat, which, like for breakfast I'd have bacon and eggs, and for lunch I'd have a boiled egg and some mayonnaise and maybe some avocado, and then for dinner I'd have some meat and some spinach, and that's pretty much my day, and plus a lot of coffee.
Yeah.
And she was saying that this food is dangerous for you. And she's a dietitian. She went to university for 3 years. And the first thing that she said was the ketogenic diet is insufficient glucose to fuel my brain.
Yeah.
So I went and did the research, and I got George Carhill's work on starvation in man, and I gave it to her and said, see, the brain will run sufficiently on ketones. In fact, not only elegantly, but extremely efficiently the brain runs on ketones. And then she says, epidemiological evidence shows that a diet full of saturated fat will clog my arteries.
Right.
And I refuted that with the RCTs, for example, the Sydney Diet Study that showed that in the intervention group, when they took out saturated fat from the diet and replaced it with polyunsaturated fat, they ended up having more death in the intervention group. In the control group, didn't see it. So she said epidemiological data, which is basically food surveys. They send out a questionnaire every year or every 2 years to nurses, and they fill out what they remember that they ate over the past year. And it's affected by what nurses think they should be eating.
It's not science.
It's not science. And the RCTs were unambiguous. And then she said that a diet without grains would cause a vitamin deficiency. So I showed her the nutritional difference between grains and meat or eggs. And finally, she said that even if science shows that a ketogenic diet was somehow healthier, no person could stick to such a boring diet.
Boring keto.
Boring keto. That's how hashtag boring keto came about. And I was just posting every meal that I ever cooked, and some of my meals look pretty good. Yeah. So, and I think I think that might have affected you. I think that might have been one of the reasons that you came around to it. But a lot of people did. A lot of my friends have come around to ketogenic diet because the food does look good and it tastes good, So
and it's delicious, yeah.
Yeah.
So here's an example. I have a friend who is trying to get started on the ketogenic diet, but having a real yen for comfort food, and late night snacking on comfort food is really throwing him off. So I said, "What do you eat?" And he says he requires eating every 3 to 4 hours. Breakfast is like 4 whole eggs.
Okay.
All right.
That's good.
I didn't hear any butter.
Yeah. No.
But breakfast is 4 eggs. Next meal will be like 4 slices of roast beef and Swiss cheese. I don't hear any fat in there except for a little in the Swiss cheese, maybe in the meat, not a lot.
Yeah.
And then next meal usually the same, and then some kind of meat for dinner, and then a yogurt for a snack or nuts to carry him through the night. And it's just screaming out that he needs more fat in order to not get hungry every 3 to 4 hours, and in order to, make it through the night. So he basically told me, give me a meal plan and I'll give it a shot.
Okay.
And so I worked out some basic stuff, with a list of things that, for the first couple of days. We're going to see how it goes. Yeah. I'll let you know. So in short, conventional wisdom is very wrong about fat and its effect on your metabolism and its effect on your weight. And if you are eating a low-carb diet that doesn't sufficiently have fat in it, try replacing some of that protein with fat. Lean into the fat, especially at first.
Yeah.
You're gonna be satisfied. Your body's gonna have the energy it needs. You won't eat as much. You won't be as hungry.
Train your body to burn fat, and then you'll find that you're less hungry. And then you can use. It probably takes about 6 months, according to Dr. Finney, but your appetite will become a reliable gauge of fuel.
Well, Richard, I think we forgot something.
Yeah, it's everybody's favourite segment.
It's
Mail!
mail.
Mail.
Mail. Mail.
Alrighty, let's do some mail.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got an email sent to dudes@2ketodudes.com, and this is from Kyle Furman. And he says, "Hello, gentlemen. I've been an avid listener to your podcast almost since the beginning, and I'm a member of the Facebook group. And I've been thinking about writing a message for a while, but tonight I decided to sit down and do it. First of all, I'm a healthcare provider at a comprehensive medical centre in an Alaskan village on the Arctic Ocean above the Arctic Circle. I've actually lived above the Arctic Circle in Sweden, believe it or not, for a year, yes. But all power to you if you can live up there. It's minus 60 degrees Celsius when we were up there, so
Good Lord.
and it's the middle of his winter, so I am sorry about that, but summer is on its way. So he goes on to say, our service area contains 11 villages, in addition to Kotzebue, the service hub, and it's the size of the state of Indiana, and most of the population of the villages are Inupiat, which is an Inuit subgroup, and those outside the main town of Kotzebue practice subsistence living. The traditional diet consists mostly of land and sea mammals and fish, just as it has been for thousands of years.
Right.
The late summer brings Arctic blueberries and a few other berries that are picked and stored in rendered animal fat. Yum.
Is that pemmican?
That sounds like pemmican, doesn't it? I know that in Sweden they have lingonberries, similar kind of thing up in the Arctic Circle during the summertime. There's only a short time at the end of summer when they're available, and the Inuit or the Sami in Scandinavia do the same. They store them in fat. So he says people only eat raw or lightly cooked meat, often, which supplies adequate vitamin C, which is destroyed in the cooking process. That's interesting because we spoke to Amber last week and she said that some of the vitamin C may still be available in cooked meat, but he indicates
But raw has more.
Raw has more, yeah. So he says in the main town there is a couple of grocery stores peddling prepared foods, sugary soda, and the rest of the mainstream westernised food. It's a horror to provide healthcare services for those in this area, I'll bet. During my time here, he says, I've been able to easily divide patients into two categories almost on site: those who live subsistence life and those who do not. And those who eat according to traditional diets are very lean, strong, quite powerfully built people with clear skin, strong hearts, and are active well into their latter years. Most low-carb, high-fat researchers at least mention this group. Those who have succumbed to prepared foods and consumption of cheap carbohydrates present with all of the markers of diseases of diet as anywhere else. It's sad, and I could talk and write about this at great length. I think it'd be interesting to have him on to talk about this, because we have a similar problem in Australia with our Aboriginal people, that the last tribe in Australia who had never had contact with Western people walked out of the desert in 1989, I believe. So, and we were able to, we sent people to find out what they ate. So we have a fair understanding of the food that they ate unaffected by Westerners. And, it was a low-carb, high-fat diet, really.
Sure.
Anyway, so Kyle goes on and he says, fortunately, I'm able to encourage those patients for whom diseases associated with insulin dysregulation has become an issue to add back in foods into their traditional diet. It's been a powerful experience to sit in a room with an adult or child with diabetes mellitus type 2, obesity, or such other conditions and urge them to return to the available options in the environment around them. I've also been resistant to add hyperglycemic prescription drugs to a patient's active medications. Metformin is one thing. I still believe metformin is useful for many, even in the healthy. Well, I've just gone back to taking metformin, even though I didn't need it for my glucose control. I would like it for my insulin sensitivity. He goes on to say, but I've not started any individual on a statin medication since I've been here. I take pride in being part of those of us in the healthcare who are fighting back against great resistance in order to advocate for our patients. Well, good on you, Kyle. Yeah. That's awesome.
Good on you.
So he says that brings us to a secondary term. I feel that the Two Keto Dudes Facebook page posts are sometimes a very anti-healthcare provider and have resulted in my decrease in activity in the group. I've seen multiple comments stating how horrible their medical provider is because they don't believe in the keto way, or they advise statins, or the list goes on. I realise that many people are unhappy with how their primary care provider is managing their healthcare, but I think it's often lost that these are people who have devoted their lives, tens or even hundreds of thousands, in their education and years of time to learning to care for those people for whom they have a responsibility.
I agree.
These are not people who are trying to hurt or otherwise hinder the health of that person.
I agree.
However, I agree too. However, they, along with what I could likely say to be every member of the keto community, have much historical dietary guidelines garbage to overcome. Apropos of our subject today.
Exactly.
He says, be patient with them. Approach them as you would a friend with whom you have a disagreement. Encourage conversation with the perspective that this person in front of you has made the mental, economic and time commitments to be a partner in your healthcare and has considerable investment in the field. Be kind to them, in brackets, us. There are those of us out there who are quietly educating our colleagues. I may not have the labs and research of the greats, Volek, Finney, Fung, etc., but I'm tolling away in my little corner of the world doing what I can on the ground level. We are out there. You just have to look. Maybe we general practitioners are even making a difference as this movement grows. I hope so. Even if you are worried to discuss this diet with your provider, please do so to pique their interest. And there truly are those for which this diet could be dangerous. For example, people on certain medications that could precipitate true metabolic acidosis if on a ketogenic diet.
And also, I might add, if people aren't smart about it, and this is why Finney says a well-formulated ketogenic diet, if you don't watch your electrolytes and all of that stuff, your heart muscle could cramp up. I mean, because, there are dangers that you have to address right up front.
That's right. So he says, finally, about your vitamin question, first of all, a correction. I believe that the vitamin B family has been referred to a couple of times as fat-soluble. B vitamins are considered water-soluble, and there are a whole bunch of them in the family. Below is a horribly truncated we'll link into the show notes, but he says there's a horribly truncated rundown of some keto-friendly vitamin sources. Many vitamins are needed in much less quantity since they are only needed for metabolism of carbohydrates. Others are manufactured by our gut flora regardless of our dietary sources.
Oh, okay.
So he does go through the B vitamins, and it's quite a lengthy post. What I'm going to do is I'm going to link it on our show notes. But
great.
And he goes through all the vitamins. And I think what we might do is we might extend an invitation to him to talk to him about his practice and about these issues.
Absolutely,
because he's
living it.
He is, and he is an exemplar of the people who are necessary to be able to start this revolution, because we need doctors involved. I remember Tom Norton, when he was on our show, said, be kind to your doctor, because if something really goes wrong, you want him in your corner, on your side.
Absolutely. Yeah. I had this experience with my doctor, as people who listen to the show know, but I'll repeat it. After I lost 35 pounds and my biomarkers of disease came down, my doctor was kind of blown away. And I said to my doctor, I don't think doctors are evil. And you might think that I have this, why didn't you tell me attitude? And I sort of do, but I mean, I don't blame you and I don't blame doctors, because you didn't learn about this stuff in medical school. Right. They didn't teach you this stuff, and they taught you how to treat symptoms and not how to cure disease. And it turns out that you do not need medication to cure yourself of diseases of civilization. Yeah. And my doctor is completely on board now.
Wonderful. So my doctor is as well, and she was into the 5-2 fast stuff, and she really didn't know a lot about keto, but all of a sudden a lot of her patients are turning up knowing about keto and having done keto, and I think part of that's because I've given her name out to some people who've asked for Canberra doctors. I think that our role really here is to start a revolution. We need to start a grassroots revolution, because we can't start it with the pharmaceutical industry and with the food industry, because they're horribly conflicted, and all the peak bodies are purchased by the food industry and the pharmaceutical industry. So,
And I would say the revolution has begun. I mean, it's been going on now for a while. And, people tell me, why don't I know this? My mother and her beau, he said, how come this isn't well known? And I said, it actually is.
Yeah.
I've been sending you links to science and links to studies. The reason that you don't hear about it from your doctor is because of this conventional wisdom around what they believe is to be the truth about saturated fat and dietary cholesterol and other stuff. And you have to be the agent of change, not the other way around. You can't expect a doctor who's been under the belief system of low fat and low cholesterol all their career to just suddenly, look at a scientific study and then start shoving fat down everybody's throat. They need an example that they can track the progress and all of that stuff to say, hey, there might be something to this.
I think part of the problem is that about 40 or 50 years ago, the medical practice ceded authority over diet to a separate group, which is dietitians and nutritionists. And really, there was a time, certainly in Australia, when my grandfather was a physician, he used to prescribe olive oil to people. And to get olive oil, you would go to the pharmacy, and it was a medicine. And, so my grandfather certainly prescribed food as a medicine, as a treatment for conditions. And my father, who was also a doctor, in his era, really, I think dietitians and nutritionists were ceded that territory. They were allowed to occupy that, and doctors really didn't want to worry about that because they could focus on surgical interventions and pharmaceuticals. And that really became what medicine was. About 40 years ago, medicine became pharmaceuticals and surgical interventions, and not long-term lifestyle changes. And
let's not treat the disease, let's treat the symptoms.
Right. And that's part of the reason why doctors are in a difficult position now, because they really can't take that territory back. So people like Gary Fettke or Tim Noakes, when they do try to take back the territory of talking about nutrition, these organisations, the dietitians and the nutritionists, basically sue them. Drag them through the mud, and try and convince the world that their credentials as medical doctors do not entitle them to talk about nutrition. And so
it's a sad state of affairs, really. And what can we say? We're incensed about it.
Yeah, we are. And we're going to do something about it. And that leads us to our piece of news.
Yes, we have some news to announce right now on Two Keto Dudes. Well, this show comes out in mid-December.
Yep.
And just before the holidays. And for a special holiday treat, we have an announcement about our Facebook group.
We do.
Now, our Facebook group recently hit the 10,000 member mark. And it came up so fast on us that it's probably, as of this recording, maybe even 1,100.
10.5 at least now. So, yeah. And that's been since April. So we started the Facebook group in April. We started the podcast in February. And since April, we've grown to 10,500 members. It'll be almost 11,000 very soon. It's out of control. It really is. And it's almost a full-time job to manage this. We've added our 1,000th Instagram follower in the past couple of weeks, and we had a competition for that.
Yeah.
And the other interesting thing is we've had over 2.2 million downloads of our weekly podcast.
If you add them all together, that's right. Yeah,
that's the amount of listens of our podcast, and the most popular of our podcast, which is Jason Fung's, will soon cross the threshold of more than 100,000 downloads.
That's amazing.
There's more than 100,000 people listening to one podcast.
So it's a very popular thing, this ketogenic diet, and it's going to become more and more and more popular. And this is why we sort of wanted to tackle this idea of conventional wisdom. But getting back to the Facebook group, we have it's been a challenge for us to manage the whole thing and provide a safe environment that's free from trolls and spammers and false information and all of that kind of stuff. And we realized that it's because of Facebook itself and the way Facebook is set up.
Yeah.
It's not easy to search for information when you have a question. It's much easier, and you are encouraged to just go in, not read anything, and ask a question, because you know a lot of people are going to answer you quickly. And they do.
Yeah. Well, 10,000 people there.
Yeah, but Facebook is set up not to make it efficient for you to find information, but to keep your eyeballs glued to Facebook.
That's right.
They want you scrolling through the feed.
Past their advertisements.
Yeah.
And I mean, if a great response to a question was put in our Facebook group a week ago, you've got no chance of finding it unless you can.
No chance.
Unless there's some unique word that was only mentioned in that one post that you can do a search on. And if Facebook's search dialogue is willing to play ball, maybe it might favour you with the response of what you're looking for. But information on Facebook is ephemeral. It disappears.
So the announcement is we're moving off of Facebook.
Yep.
Let that sink in for a second. Well, I have to give my wife, Kelly, credit for this.
Okay.
She said, Facebook is terrible for finding information. You guys should have a forum.
Good idea.
And I immediately thought about a forum that Richard and I use all the time as software developers, Stack Overflow.
Right.
StackOverflow.com. This is a forum that is moderated by the users of the forum, and answers to questions are easily searched and voted up so that anybody can come and type in a question, and you're going to get a pertinent answer thread, and you're going to get the most voted good answer to that question that you have. And so now we're developing a database of knowledge.
Right.
And that is curated by the community. So the forum is at ketogenicforums.com.
Yep.
And currently you have to have an invite because we're not open for business yet. We're going to open on Christmas Day.
Yep.
For our listeners. We're going to keep our Facebook page open, but the pin post will be all about, the new forum, ketogenicforums.com. So then we're going to officially open the door to the public on January 1st, although we're actually doing it on Christmas Day. But January 1st is going to be our official thing where
it's a Christmas present. We're giving everyone a Christmas present. If you want to get in access, just go in and make an account and you're in.
That's right. You'll be able to sign in with Facebook or Google or Twitter or Instagram or Yahoo.
Yep.
Or you can create a login based on your email address.
The cool thing about this, with Facebook, we have 10,000 users and we have 20 admins, and we can barely keep on top of everything because there are so many spam messages. There's people drop porn in this on our Facebook group, all sorts of rubbish that we have to keep off. And you probably don't notice this, but it's driving everybody crazy. The cool thing about this forum is that it works on trust. So the longer that you are a participant working with the forum, the higher your trust level will become until you become a moderator.
It's gamified a little bit.
It is gamified a little bit. We have badges. We don't need no stinking badges.
Badges are sort of a recognition of, you earned this badge because of, what you did and didn't do.
Yeah.
And so, as Richard says, you can become a moderator by sticking around long enough and being a good citizen.
Yep. Engaging with the community.
Right. And not having flagged posts, because anybody can flag a post for anybody else. And then it's up to the moderators to decide, does this post belong in this topic or this discussion? We can move it to another category or another topic, that kind of thing. So people get to participate in policing their own forum, and that's what's amazing about it.
Yeah, that's what's going to enable us to grow into the millions.
Yes.
Facebook really tapped out for us around about 3,000 or 4,000.
Yeah.
Past that, it was almost a full-time job just to keep our Facebook community pleasant and sociable to each other.
Yeah.
So, and we're at the point now where we cannot grow any further and still be a volunteer organisation.
Right.
So, but the good thing about moving to a forum is that we're going to be able to grow to 1 million people.
not only that, but this isn't just going to be a Carl and Richard forum. This is going to be a ketogenic forum for everybody in the community to participate in. And that means, we sometimes talk about the two types of people that use the low-carb, high-fat diet, the performance athletes and the type 2 diabetics.
Right.
And they're on opposite sides of a spectrum. And each has different concerns about what they eat and how they move and all of that stuff. And so those people can have their own topic, their own forum, their own category as well.
Yeah, that's right. With Facebook, we have one silo and it scrolls by so quickly and everybody has to try and get their differing viewpoints in, and people come into conflict with each other because they have different goals. And with the forum, what we're going to be able to do is we're going to be able to have an area which is set aside for people who don't want profanity. And we're going to be able to have an area that's set aside for people who want to focus on anabolism and building muscle and performance athleticism. And we can have an area that's set aside for people who are trying to get out from underneath type 2 diabetes.
And obesity.
And there will be common groups, for example, talking about recipes and talking about ways to formulate a ketogenic diet and
medical concerns,
talking about fat, protein, meat, vegetables. All of these are good subject areas that are appropriate for categorization.
So our plan, again, is to open the forum to the public, ketogenicforums.com, on Christmas Day, and which is only a few days from the publication of this podcast, and do an official opening on New Year's Day. And so then we're going to keep the Facebook group open until the end of January. At the end of January, we're giving it a Viking funeral.
We're gonna tow it out to sea and we're gonna light it up.
Right. And the people who go there will still be able to see, hey, why is nothing going on here? Why can't I join, etc. And there'll be a pinned post that says, here's why.
So long and thanks for all the fish.
That's right.
That month of January is going to give everybody an opportunity to try both and be comfortable with the new forum. And we recommend people post their questions in both places if they don't mind, because a lot of people won't have yet gone to the forum, and so you'll probably get good responses in both places. But at the end of January, we're going to make our existing Facebook forum with 10,500 members, probably 11,000, maybe even 12,000 by then. We're going to make the entire thing read-only.
So, and by read-only, Richard, what do we mean exactly?
What we mean is that you won't be able to post any new topics in the forum, in the Facebook forum. If you're a member of the Facebook forum, you'll still be able to go there and search and read old topics. But if you're not a member of the Facebook group, we won't be accepting new members, and we will have a pinned post at the top of the forum for existing members and an introductory post for prospective members explaining where we went.
Great. Well, we know that took a while to get through, but we're glad you stuck with us because now it's time for recipes.
I love this bit.
Recipes. I'm going to go first today.
You go first, Carl.
All right. As you know, Richard and I are turning a town ketogenic one weekend this coming summer.
We are.
And it's going to be called Keto Fest. You can go to ketofest.com to learn about it and sign up if you want more information as it happens.
Yeah.
But I got an email from Matt and Mega, who run Keto Connect, and you can get there at ketoconnect.net. And they wanted to come and do some cooking classes.
Wow.
Now, he pointed me to a very popular recipe for keto bread on YouTube.
Okay.
And it is very popular, but unlike cloud bread or oopsie bread, which, was one of my first offerings here, this is a bread that you make in a bread pan. Just like a regular loaf of bread, although it's kind of the same ingredients as oopsie bread, minus the cream cheese and with a bit more butter. But I made it, and it's fantastic. And let me give you the recipe. Just with a caveat, though.
Okay.
I wanted to have a little yeast flavor in my bread. So I went out and got some instant rise yeast.
Okay.
And I added a little bit to it, and yes, that did make it better.
Yeah.
About a tablespoon of instant rise yeast. Just add it to the dry ingredients. All right, so here you go. You need 1.5 cups of almond flour.
Mm-hmm.
You need 6 large eggs separated. You need
Okay.
4 tablespoons of butter melted. You need 3 teaspoons of baking powder, a 1/4 teaspoon of cream of tartar, and 1 pinch of salt. And if you've ever made keto bread or cloud bread or oopsie bread before, you probably know what to do here, but their instructions are a little bit different. First of all, you preheat your oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit.
Mm-hmm.
You separate the egg whites from the egg yolks. You add cream of tartar to the whites and beat it until soft peaks are achieved. Now, in my world, when I'm making oopsie bread, I beat the egg whites until they're stiff peaks.
Right.
But they say not to do that, and that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
And now they want you to, in a food processor, combine the egg yolks, butter, almond flour, baking powder, and salt and mix until combined. And it does create a lumpy, thick dough, and it balls up and everything.
Okay.
And I'm going to take a minute here to talk about a recall. So if you have a Cuisinart food processor, you might want to check out the link that we post or just search the Googles and the Bings for Cuisinart food processors recalled. This was a story from December 13th. And if you have a Cuisinart food processor that has a model number that fits the list, there's a laceration hazard. In other words, bits of the blade can chip off during processing and end up in your food and end up in your gut. And you could have the same problem that Shane Barnbrook had, which is, he ripped his gut open with a chicken bone.
Yeah.
So this is no joke. It's very serious. I actually have one of those Cuisinart food processors and I had to replace it. So fortunately, I found out after I made my bread, and I haven't made any since, and I'm waiting for my new blade.
And there's no mystery bits of blade disappearing.
No, not at all.
Good. That's a relief.
All right. So after you have this thick, lumpy dough, you add 1/3 of the beaten egg whites to the almond flour mixture and process it thoroughly.
Okay.
And the reason is you want to get some liquid in there and make a batter consistency before you fold in the rest of the egg whites.
So that's going to beat down the egg whites that you've added in there. Yeah. Fair enough.
Yep. That's fair enough, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So now you add the remaining, you don't actually take it out and fold it in like we do with cloud bread. And this works great. You add the remaining 2/3 of the egg whites and gently process until fully incorporated. Be careful not to overmix. So I just did a pulse, 4 or 5 pulses.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't just fold it in because that would have left streaks of egg white and everything. You do want it incorporated, but you don't overdo it.
Yeah.
And then it goes into a buttered 8x4 loaf pan, and you bake it for 30 minutes and check it with a toothpick because in 30 minutes, if that toothpick comes out clean, oh my gosh, is it good. Get it out of that pan and maybe let it sit for 5 minutes, slice it up, put it in the toaster or grill it with butter.
A panini press, yep.
Yeah, or just in a fry pan with butter, to get that grilled
cheese toasty
on it. Yeah. And it has the consistency of cornbread.
Oh, I love cornbread.
In fact, it's a great cornbread substitute.
Oh, I'm going to do that then because I do like cornbread.
And maybe if you want it a little sweeter, you can add a little sweetener to it to get that sweet flavor. And I don't know if there is such a thing as essence of corn.
I think I've seen popcorn essence, so I guess that's kind of close. Yeah.
Yeah, that might be worth trying. Put a little of that in. And again, I added a tablespoon of yeast to it, and not for the rise because obviously there's no sugar for the yeast to consume and create the gas, but just for the flavor because I love a bready flavor. And if you want a more cornbready flavor, I would omit the yeast and do it just the way that Matt and Mega say to do it.
You could actually use a honey essence, which has no honey in it, no sugars in it at all, but it's that flavour of honey, because honeyed cornbread is a thing, something I became quite addicted to when I was in the States.
And you have such a thing, honey essence?
Yeah. I'll put links in the show notes, but that place that we get our essences from, they have a honey essence. Yes, definitely.
Fantastic.
Incredible.
All right, buddy. That's my recipe. What do you got?
I have a simple recipe. It only has 4 ingredients, and one of the ingredients is beer.
Okay,
I've got some beers here. Let's see. These are from Burley Brewing Company. Now, this is a company in Australia, and I do apologise to everybody outside Australia, but you're probably only going to be able to do this recipe if you have access to these.
Why is that? What kind of beer is it that makes it so special?
It's beer with no carbohydrates.
What?
0 carb beer.
Wow.
And even though I'm in day 3 of a 4-day Zorn fast, I did have a mouthful before I cooked with it just to make sure that it tasted okay, and it tastes really quite nice.
Wow.
So these are from Burley Brewing, and they use a special yeast to be able to get it 0 carb. Obviously, the yeast it eats the sugars in the grains and converts them into alcohol and carbon dioxide. And most yeasts will leave a little bit of the glucose, but they were able to find a yeast that was able to eat everything. It was extremely good scavenger of available glucose. So they were able to reduce it all.
Well, that's a yeast I want to use in bread, right?
Yeah, or kombucha, or yeah. Definitely. So anyway, this is Big Head No Carb Lager from Burley Brewing Company. And I apologise for everybody outside Australia, but since Carl did a recipe last week that needs clam juice, which is not available in Australia, I figure only turnabout is fair.
Only fair.
It is only fair. So this recipe has 4 ingredients. One of them is beer. So I started off with 2 bottles of beer. They're 300ml bottles, so 600 mils of beer, about a pint of beer in a slow cooker, to which I add some herbs. And I had a couple of bay leaves that were falling off a bay tree outside, so I just grabbed a handful of those, tossed those in. Then I got some bolar beef, which is the bolar cut is from the shoulder. It's kind of like in a pig it would be called the butt. It'd be called the pork butt.
So it's a beef shoulder.
It's a beef shoulder, yeah. It's that fatty sort of piece under the shoulder and the top of the arm. So basically, it's extremely cheap, and it needs to be really cooked for a long time. But it has a fatty cap. So what I do is I chop it into chunks, and of course there will be a recipe on our blog that shows you how to do this, and you can see the pictures of me chopping it into chunks. But basically, I chop it into chunks, about 2 inches cube chunks, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to sear them in the pan. Now, normally when you make, and what I'm making is a pulled beef in beer.
Oh.
Now, the traditional recipe, you have a lot of sugar, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to caramelize the outside of the meat first.
Okay.
So I'm going to put some of the meat fat cap side down in a hot cast iron pan. What it's going to do is it's going to render out the fat, and then I'm going to cook all 6 sides of the cubes of meat, and then I'm going to put them in the slow cooker with the beer and with the herbs. And I did say there was one other ingredient, it's water. The ingredients are meat, beer, and water, and some herbage. And you put that in a slow cooker for about 10 hours. Okay. And at the end of the 10 hours, once it becomes soft, so you get a couple of forks and you see if you can peel apart the meat. And if you can peel apart the meat, you turn off the slow cooker and use the 2 forks to shred the entire meat. And what it does is those fibers of meat pick up the juices that the meat has been cooking in. Before you start shredding, there's a fair amount of liquid, and then there's the pieces of meat. Once you've shredded up all of the meat, it soaks up all of those juices, and so it's just like a big old pot of pulled beer-tasting beef.
Nice.
Now, I've actually got a keto meetup, a Canberra meetup on Tuesday, and that's what I'm bringing, a big pot of beef.
And how much beer did you say you use in this thing?
I use about a pint. So 2 of these stubby containers, which are
12 ounces maybe?
Yeah, it's about 12 ounces. About 24 ounces of beer.
So I found a beer, Budweiser Select 55, that has only 1.9 grams of carbs per 12-ounce bottle. So if you want to use that instead, that's only roughly 4 grams of carbohydrate.
Yeah. Well, when you think about it, that I'm putting in about 3.5 kilograms of bolar beef. That's a bolar roast is about 3.5 kilograms, And we would normally here, once we pulled the meat, we would then put it into freezer bags, 200 grams per portion. We end up, and that feeds 2 people. So basically we would end up with 35 meals. So, and it costs about $35. So for about $35, I can make 35 meals. And then you'd have the pulled meat and maybe cabbage or something, low carb vegetable.
That's really trace amounts of carbohydrates, even if you use a low carb beer.
Yeah, you could use a low carb beer, as you say, but I'm going to bring to the Breckenridge conference some of these big head beers. With me.
That's awesome.
Use my duty free allowance on that.
Fantastic, Richard. Well, as we said, we know it's a long show, but we had a lot to say.
Yeah, of course, if you have anything that you want to tell us, something we said wrong or something that you don't agree with, or some more research that you found to support or refute what we've said, send it by email to dudes@twoketodudes.com or post it on our website.
And of course, you can follow us on Twitter @2KetoDudes, on Instagram @2KetoDudes, and of course, for the next month or so, if you want to join our Facebook community, it's fb.2keto.com.
And from Christmas Day onwards, you're going to be able to join us on ketogenicforums.com.
Absolutely. Keep calm and keto on, buddy.
Keep calm and keto on, Carl.
All right. And we'll see you next time on 2 Keto Dudes.